Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast-producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta, but I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
I'm BJ Sewura, an aspiring paranormal musician who plays live for the dead because the living just doesn't want to hear me.
The Dead of Winter Horror Network and Nick King from the 508 Productions invite you to endure the most terrifying immersive experience in all of podcasting. Beneath the Red Umbrella, now available wherever you listen to podcasts. Beneath the Red Umbrella, when the snow falls, the killing season begins.
We're live. Yeah. Woo! That's all you had to just say that. Okay, here we go.
It's like demon sex. Got it. Here we go.
You're going to get us cut off on Facebook. Stop. All right. What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our unearthly pals out there? In today's episode, we'll be discussing the paranormal, demonology, and parapsychology with special guest Bill Slevin. Bill is a paranormal investigator, demonologist, and has been a part of over 1,000 residential paranormal investigations. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, very excited to have you on. It's always fun every season. I put out a post that's just like, hey, here's what kind of guests we're looking for. Is there anyone interested in having a conversation about being on? And I feel like each season we get more diverse responses. So when you respond and you're like, hey, I'm interested, I looked at your website and I'm like, yes, let's do this.
Yeah, I saw the post and I said, let me reach out because, I like being on. I like being on a lot of podcasts. Anybody that wants to talk, I'm willing to come on and talk with, and I enjoy doing it.
I appreciate that. I think part of our goal over the last 5 seasons has really been to normalize these conversations, right? Normalize talking about demonology and ghosts and paranormal and metaphysical and everything else in between.
Yes.
So thank you for helping us normalize.
Sure.
I guess for me, my first question to you is, I know you've been in the paranormal field for well over 35 years, although you don't look a day over 30. What got you started in, even being interested in that?
Well, I mean, for me, it's always been in my life. I've just always been drawn to anything paranormal, horror. When I was a little kid, I was never scared of horror movies or scared of the haunted house in the neighborhood. I was more interested, and I always say it was a little harder back in my day trying to learn about it because there wasn't internet, there wasn't TV shows, it wasn't talked about a lot. And I was raised in a Catholic family and you didn't talk about ghosts and demons and things like that. So it was kind of just me wanting to know more and some of the experiences I was having to learn if they were actually real or if I was, a little crazy or what was going on. And I just started, as much as I could reading any book I could find in a library, trying to find anybody who would talk about this. And it wasn't until I always say I've been actively investigating for 36 years because I started I think my first investigation was in 1989. So before that, I was always into it. I was out there doing things. I just wasn't on an actual residential investigation.
Yeah, and we're talking about the 80s. There wasn't a lot out there, right? In terms of even books, there wasn't a lot being publicized because especially back then, there wasn't really self-publishing where you could just flood it into the market, right, no matter who accepted it or not. You had to go through publishers and be accepted. So the books were not common. Do you happen to remember any of the books that really kind of helped you jump off into that world?
That's a good question.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I back then I read anything I could find. There was stuff on like even on occult, rituals, like anything I can find. I think there was stuff back where I was reading on Hans Holzer and things like that, but there was not a lot to find. There was articles here and there. I mean, I was also young at that time, and going into a library, you were limited on what you could find and what you could actually research, and it was definitely, there's a lot more out there now.
Yeah, all we had was Goosebumps but I also grew up in the South, so they kept a lot of that out.
Right. I grew up in New Jersey, so.
You don't say. I can always tell my East Coast friends by how they say horror. Horror.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. I'm like, say it again. Mufasa. Ooh.
I've been down here in Florida now, I think 28 years, but originally from Jersey.
You know what I think's funny? I think about the books back in the 80s, and I think there's a lot more like sci-fi stuff, right? There's a lot more like space and exploration, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is what it felt like, right? Carl Sagan, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. There really wasn't a lot, and you didn't have internet, you didn't have things that you could research on, and like I said, people weren't talking about it then, so even if people were doing it, they weren't all writing books yet. You had the Warrens, you had certain people that were around and did certain, but there wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot to learn back then. It was tough. You had to find people.
Speaking of people, were you able to find people? Was that the community is growing larger and larger every year, but back then, were you able to find a community?
It was hard. Took me years to really find anybody to go on a case with. That's why I say I started investigating in '89 and it was one of those things. It was a friend of mine who had a friend that somehow was brought up, and they knew somebody that needed an investigator for the night because one of their friends, they had 3 people that were investigating, and one of them was sick, so they asked me to come along on a case. So after that, it got a little easier because I got into a little bit of a group with a few people, and I found, some other people that were investigators. But it was tough at first. It was very, very hard.
Well, and you mentioned the Warrens. I listened to one of the podcasts you were on before, and I was wondering, how did you get in contact with them initially?
Yeah. So now there's a few things with the Warrens. So when I wish I could say I met Ed and Lorraine, but I did not. I was not, I knew of them. I knew who they were. I knew a lot about them, but I had never met them personally. I got in touch with Chris McKennell, who's grandson of Ed and Lorraine. And I forget how I wound up getting in touch with him a few years back. And he was explaining to me about the Warren Legacy Foundation that carries on the legacy of them. So he asked me to be on, and I came on as a member. And after that, right away, they put me on as the regional director for the southeastern U.S. originally. And then after that, maybe within a year or so, I became like a manager and a director that helped run the foundation. I was doing that for about 3 years. I honestly just recently left. And there may be some new things coming on in the future that still involves the Warrens, but I met so many great people. I have Joe Frankie, who's a great friend of mine now too, that worked with Ed and Lorraine for 36 years, and a lot of people that are actually some people on my team I found through the Warren Foundation, because I got members on my team all throughout Florida, Georgia, Nebraska, New England, UK, Italy, Greece, and Brazil coming this year. So I got people all over the place, and a lot of people I met in the foundation that are great people because they're all great investigators. They're not, people that believe every sound and everything is a ghost and a demon. They know how to really investigate. So it's good to have like-minded people like that you could talk to and everything.
Yeah, it sounds like you're missing Colorado in your team, Bill. So, we've got like an ample supply of Colorado investigators for you. So, really quickly, Dano says, I believe it's Dano, says, "Hey, Bill, We also have Raymond chiming in saying that I read books on the occult from middle school library here in Kentucky. So that's cool. We've got some people participating, and feel free, guys. Anyone that's listening, watching, like if you want to drop comments in the chat, if you have questions, anything you want to ask Bill, let us know. We're happy to ask him and have that conversation for you.
Yeah, see, V, that's my wife. She's on the team technically, but she doesn't investigate. She's a energy healer and a Reiki master, so she'll help with our clients that need energy work, but she doesn't like the investigating part.
Hi V. I can relate actually. So John and BJ, they love investigations. More and more BJ's getting into investigations and exploring that world. For me, not my favorite thing to do. However, that also is kind of one of those double-edged swords because it's not my favorite thing to do, but I'm also highly sensitive. So
Right. She came once recently because she was very interested. Like she knows about spirit box and she knows about what the Estes method is, and we do a thing called the Delco experiment, which is the Estes method with the Delco goggles. And she's seen our videos, and she actually came out because she said, I want to try this because there is no way that they can't hear what you're asking. You know, she did not believe it, and she didn't believe that there was those things were going along with what we were asking and nobody was hearing each other. And she did it, and she was pretty surprised. She couldn't hear anything, and she was spitting out stuff and hearing stuff, and it was going along with what we were asking. And I don't know if she'll come back again and do it, but she did it because she was curious, you know.
Do you know why? Because that's one thing you had brought up before is the goggles as part of it. Now, with or without the goggles, what does it do?
So the Estes method.
Well, I know what that is, but I'm just talking about like adding the goggles to it because I've done the Estes method without, and just closing your eyes and just
sure. Yeah, they used to use just a blindfold. So Mike Del Coro from War Party Paranormal here in Florida, he's the one that created the goggles, and what he did was he took it's an experiment from back in parapsychology called the Gansfield experiment. They used to take ping pong balls, cut them in half, put them over people's eyes, and hit them with red light deprivation to enhance their psychic abilities. And there would be somebody like in another room looking at a picture, and they would try to get them to see what they were looking at. So it's believed that the red light deprivation, helps your abilities. So all he did was just add the goggles instead of a blindfold to try to give you that red light deprivation. And I'll tell you, we've seen some really, really amazing results with it, especially for people who are sensitive and psychic. They see more. I guess the red light really enhances their abilities, and it's been pretty impressive. I like it way, way more than the blindfold.
Yeah, I think that would be fun to try. I've done it a few times on different things. Like we do it. I mean, it's obviously not the SS method if everybody can hear it, but we try to do both, right? Because like it's kind of fun. Like if sometimes it's just one person, or you just switch it to have somebody else listen, take turns. But then we'll just have everybody listen and see if that does anything, and we'll have like a couple different spirit boxes going to see if they're syncing up at all, or if there's any kind of
right.
And so I don't know.
There's so much controversy behind the spirit box, because there are sounds coming from the radio stations, But, you try to explain to people if you ask a question and they answer even anything more than one syllable, there's no way it came across that one, those multiple radio stations. It's not a radio thing. But that's why the Estes method helps kind of change that a little bit. I'm not saying it's 100%, but it helps, it takes a little bit out of it because our minds are trained to hear things. So if we're in a room and we say, did you live here or work here? Every person in that room is now, their mind is focused to hear, live or work, So it takes that out of the equation because you're just yelling out anything you hear. And if it goes along with what we're saying, it's questionable there.
I know some of them have been, at least with us, have been a little. I'll be the first to admit I'm highly skeptical when it comes to anything that has to do with like radio waves or channels or anything like that, because similar to what you said, you kind of like your brain is listening for words, and so
Right.
it's going to wait for those words. But we've had a few instances where we're at a location and just randomly, hearing the same, I wouldn't even say random because it's probably not, but hearing the same name from like 3 or 4 different voice ranges, within a short amount of time. It's like, oh, okay, that's odd. That's different. I'm
Yeah.
listening. And then all of them together laughing. And it's like, oh, I don't think it's supposed to do that. Please take your headphones.
Right. Yeah, there's been some very interesting stuff with the spirit boxes and the SD method and Delco and all that. Like I said, I have 33 years in technology, and I know how a lot of this stuff works. I'm not saying it can't be something, but to me, if I can explain it naturally, then it can't be considered paranormal. So that's why I love audio. Audio recorders to me are the greatest piece of evidence you could have. Especially, I know a lot of people don't like the older ones. I like some of the older ones. I just think they work differently. I think the HD filters out the ones that are new that are for HD, they filter out that background noise, which is what I believe they use to communicate. So I think the older ones are a little better, and you can't really manipulate those. I mean, half of those, I go through a nightmare trying to get stuff off of my DR60 onto something outside of that DR60, because you need a mono cord into a stereo cord into another recorder, and then you got to play and record and play, and it's a real pain. But that's the only way to get it into something to try to enhance like the quality or whatever. But
what do you think of like the like? So like I use just like Zoom recorders, just like nothing fancy, just like the H1Ns, like they're just they're little just digital recorders. But those I think were fine, right? They're not filtering. There's no you could turn on the low cut filter and all that, but I just leave all that off, right?
Yeah, some of the really expensive ones that are made to really, filter everything out, and there's good and bad things to it. If it's filtering out background noise, that's always good, because some of these things can be very, very sensitive. Like I was talking about the DR60. I like it. It's interesting, and we've gotten some amazing captures off of it. Really, really clear things. But you have to understand that the recorder has a flaw, and it has issues, and 9 out of 10 times it's going to spit out a whole bunch of staticky garbage. As long as you can decipher between that, they're fine to use. If you want to go spend $4,000 on a $20 recorder now.
So, Bill, we have a few comments.
Yeah.
Robert, well, actually, I'm going to start with the second and go back to the first because you warned us about the first one. So,
so I know who this is already.
So, Dano asked, what about Ovulus?
So, the Ovulus is another one of those interesting devices. It does use a word bank. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. Everything that comes out of it is not going to be... I mean, if you turn it on, it's going to start spitting out words. It doesn't do it all the time, not like the phone apps, but it will spit out stuff randomly. If it goes along with what you're asking, then I would say, yeah, it can be considered, possible evidence. Now, if you get direct, constant responses back and forth, and you're in a place where this guy John was there, and he died in the house, and he's saying his first name and his last name, you have to go by what it is, because it is a word bank. So I believe it to, like, for instance, we were at a place... it was Flamingo Gardens down in Davie, Florida. It's like a zoo, and we were allowed to go in one night and investigate. And they have an old house that's the museum from the original owners, and inside they had an old record player and all their old stuff is there because it's a museum during the day. One of my teammates was holding the Ovulus, and he saw the record playing. He goes, "Oh, what kind of did you listen to music? What kind of music did you listen to?" And it spit up and it said Edison, and we're like, Edison, and we looked up at the record player, and it was an Edison record player. So it's things like that. Like that's a pretty random word, Again, it's coming from a word bank, but it's pretty random word that just happened to come up at that time. I mean, I didn't even see that, So things like that with the Ovilus. Do not use Spirit Talker. Don't get me started on the apps. But that's a whole nother story. But yeah, Ovilus, I like it. It's fun to play around with. I wouldn't bring it into a residential investigation. I only use audio, video, and environmental stuff going into a residential, like stuff that checks temperatures, EMF meters, and we're not using EMF meters for yes/no questions. We're doing them for baseline readings around the house to see what's where EMF is coming out of, if they have unshielded wires, things like that. So I like to play around with those things when we're out on public investigations, but I would never use them in a residential.
That's super smart to use those to gauge where parts of the house might be hot due to natural circumstances. Yeah. So then we have Robert Hoffman, who says, "Hey, Bill, explain orbs."
Of course he does. Rob is on my team, by the way. Do we want to go into orbs? Didn't you have a question?
Orbs is a hot topic.
Yeah.
All right. So when I'm lecturing, especially, I go into a section of orbs. And a lot of people are very interested to hear about it and like what I have to say, and then I lose some people. and Dano there has been to many of my shows, and he'll know. So all these things you see on the Ring camera, on your security cameras and everything, they are absolutely not ghosts. Now, okay, I want to take that back. Wait a second. I don't want to say absolutely. I will say 99% chance of not being a ghost. I can never say it's 100% not, because we don't know everything. But real orbs were around for a long time. They were called either spirit balls, energy balls, things like that. I've seen 3 in my lifetime. They are extremely rare. They are solid 3D balls of energy. They pull the energy from the room. It's believed to be a spirit or a demon trying to manifest itself into the area. So they pull the energy from the room. And that's why I don't know anybody who's ever captured a real orb on film, because it pulls the energy. It drained every battery. You can feel it pulling the energy from your body. And the first one I saw was on a demonic case, and it was amazing. It went from like a golf ball to a softball size. It moves around very intelligent, and it emits its own light. It doesn't reflect light. So it's like I say, it's like a mini sun. It actually lights up. So if you had security cameras or your Ring camera and a real orb floated into the room, it would trick your camera into daytime mode, because it would be like turning a lamp on in the room. And it can't be. That's why, because it's 3D energy and it doesn't reflect light. It cannot be flat. It cannot be transparent. It cannot be translucent. The things that they see on the camera are bugs, dust, pollen, dander, hair. I mean, anything you can think of flies by those cameras. And because the cameras are what's called fixed focal lenses, they can only focus at a certain distance. So anything too close to them becomes round, transparent, blurry, and it's like spiders will look completely like a round circle most of the time. And they'll be transparent, because the camera doesn't understand the infrared lights are bouncing off of it and making it glow. So it tricks a lot of people, and TV and the internet have kind of confused people, because it is the easiest thing to capture. So everybody will go with it because it's going to give you views. It's going to give you, people watching, whatever it is, and whatever. I mean, look, there's paranormal entertainment and there's paranormal, and I have no problem with both. I've been on shows. I like the shows. But orbs are real. They're just very, very rare.
I like that distinction. There's paranormal entertainment, and then there's paranormal.
Well, you know what I say? Like, I don't discredit TV shows. I'm not going to come on and bash Zach and all these TV shows and everything. I enjoy them. But, and I tell people, they're real. Some of them are real investigators. They're using real equipment, and they're in real haunted locations. So there are times they're going to get things. But some of those shows take 26 days to film. So, and they put it together for your 45 minutes show. We go in, I'm sure you guys know, you've been in places for 10 hours and captured nothing. It happens. So that's the difference. But I know you had something about orbs, BJ.
Oh yeah, no. So it was more kind of a collection of things. So I just went on an investigation about a week ago. It was a Hellscream haunted house place, and it had it's a haunted house that's actually haunted as well, or that's what they say. And so we did a investigation there. We did the human pendulum.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, which I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, but okay, let's give it a shot. And when I was doing it, I got a few different things. I would the most telling part about that was whenever I would ask a question, I would get overwhelmed by just energy, just hitting me so hard, almost like. And I even said in the videos that I have, it says like a spidey sense. And then right when I say that, you see this orb kind of go like this, past.
Right. Now,
which
again, I can't say 100% absolutely not, but from my knowledge with technology and photography and everything, the term orb came out at the birth of digital cameras. Because the flash was too close to the lens, so when it took pictures, the light reflected off the flash into the lens and created the orbs. So most of the time, it's not going to be anything, because of what it is. And the main thing is, when this orb came by, the orb was on the video, correct?
Yes.
Okay. A real orb you will see with your eyes.
Okay.
Because
yeah. Oh no, I wasn't. I didn't have my eyes open at the time.
Okay,
but other people may have seen it. But I know I get what you're saying. So that is probably just dust because we were in a basement.
Right, and I tell people. I've had people tell me I was in a room. The camera was in the room, and there's no airflow. I'm like, well, you live in a science lab.
In a vacuum.
There's airflow. If you're sitting there and you move your hand like this, that's enough airflow to knock dust all over the place, Yeah. But one of the main things with orbs is with your eyes, and the reason I say that is because a piece of dust reflecting infrared light, your eyes can't see infrared light. That's why you will not see that piece of dust glowing.
Right.
Now, if you're in the daylight or the sunlight or a flash, you can see it because it's reflecting regular light that our eyes could see. But night vision, the infrared lights, our eyes can't see them, so you're not going to see those things that are highlighted by the infrared lights. So if a piece of dust flies past your face like this and it's reflecting the light, you're still not going to see it. So that's why the main thing is if you see it with your eyes, then you have something different.
Right, and then obviously, if you have it on camera and you saw it, then you're in business, right?
Then please show me.
Well, see, and that was the other thing is that was probably the least telling thing, or I guess for me there. It was more the emotion, the energy that I got hit with, and then every time that I did that, I have it on 3 different sessions where I would just say do I know or do you know me, and then just really loud couple knocks, you'd hear it right as I say it. I'd be like, oh God. And then, it was kind of a weird thing, but maybe somebody was knocking that worked there. I don't know.
Well, and this is something I tell everybody too, because I'm in a lot of Facebook groups. I haven't been that active in them lately because I had to take a break. People were making me crazy. I go in and I try to be nice. I'm very professional, very polite. If they'll post photos and they're asking for, what is this? What could this be? I go in and I try to tell them. Unfortunately, they get really pissed when I tell them it's dust or something, and I get screamed at and called all kinds of names and whatever. But, one of the things I explain to them is your experience is completely different. An experience is different than a capture. An experience is a lot easier to have than a capture. Maybe that orb flew by, what you think was an orb, and maybe something was going on at the time and you felt it or you experienced it, but it doesn't necessarily mean you captured it.
No.
And it's two different things. I mean, I wish I could show these things and I can't, But when you see it, if you get the lucky experience to see one in person, then you will understand completely. You'll say, "Oh, I get it." I get it now.
I think the sounds, because even visually, like stuff that you see visually can play with your eyes, right? Like shadow figures and all that kind of thing, right? But like audible stuff for me, or smells, like something that you can hear or see, and those are like for me the biggest, like, oh God, like there's something else here, right?
Right.
Especially like knocks. If you hear knocks, it's like, what? Nobody's knocking. Like, why would somebody just be knocking? I mean, maybe they're messing with you. Maybe the people that are there, right? That's the easy answer to that. But
right, as long as you're in a controlled environment, a lot of people ask. Well, one of the questions I get a lot is why do you go at night? Ghosts are only out at night, And
Yes.
yeah, well, yes, they're only there at night. No, but they're there all day. But the thing is, you have less interference. People are sleeping. People are more quiet at night. There's not as many cars going by. There's many things. And then also, like you were saying about the way you see things with your eyes, sunlight is a horrible, horrible thing when you're trying to investigate in a place, because that slightest bit of sun coming through a little crack in something can create the craziest of shadows in there. And if you're not paying attention to every little bit of sunlight coming in, it could trick you, really, really good. I've been tricked many times by that stuff. So that's a lot of the reason, including the fact that we're using stuff that's using infrared and full spectrum, which, it's believed that the spirits appear through there, that things our eyes can't see. So we're using something to enhance it. But I've done it during the day plenty of times, and captured stuff.
just quickly with the light thing, you talked about infrared. When I go on paranormal investigations, like I'm not using a camera that's I'm using like a low light camera, so I have to have some light to be showing me around. I usually use like either just like a dark or like a purple, or like kind of like what I have here, like purple or a dark blue. Is there anything, any specific color that I should be using? Does it matter?
There's a lot of people that go toward the red for some reason. My whole room's red, but no, it's not really. That doesn't matter. I mean, keep it at a low light, because if you put like I have the Phasm lights from Ghost Stop, which in my opinion are some of the best lights out there. That little tiny Phasm light will light up a massive auditorium. It's amazing how much IR light that puts out. And then on the back with their full spectrum, you can set it to it has lights to set to any color you want pretty much. So it doesn't really matter. It's more to what you like. I have never seen something specifically that stands out more than the others,
Yeah, I'm trying to, that's the thing, I'm just trying to figure, experiment, right? You try to experiment with whatever you can. And for me, it's been light and music specifically and together. Like I've been trying to practice, getting contact with spirits through music, but also maybe trying to sync that up with different light, and what, different light or music is its own language itself, and trying to play something that has, it's the key of G or whatever, and it has this kind of tone, and this brings this kind of energy to it, and seeing what comes from that. I think that's a really fun thing to do.
Yeah, and here's something that a lot of people don't think about, and I've seen many people do this technique. A lot of people from the War Party team that I work with too, and other teams I've been with around for years. I've seen them do this where they'll start singing a song, and then anything like "Row, row your boat," and then stop, and some people have captured it singing back, finishing the line either through the spirit box or on a recorder. Those are fun things to play with, because that's something that's, again, controlled environment. Make sure you don't have your buddies in the hallway because they will mess with you.
All I can think of is Roger Rabbit. Like,
right, that's hilarious. We did that one time at the Abbey Monastery in Canyon City, Colorado. It's just built the early, I think the 1920s or something. But we played bingo. Bingo was his name. And then it went B-I, and then those spirit box was like NGO.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, see,
did you record that? Where is that?
Yes. I have it. I don't know. I have to put it on stuff.
I like how you said, I don't know. You send us like orb things and like doors blowing, but you get something as solid as like something finishing
I don't know if
BINGO
that's
and you don't
solid,
send
though.
it.
Is that solid though?
It's more solid than a screen door blowing.
Okay.
If
Well, I
it's
don't know.
clear, that's solid.
Right.
Because spirit boxes, that's my biggest thing. Is like I'm always like so wary about them. It's like is AI like hearing the thing and then just spitting out like something?
There's no
that
microphones on a spirit box.
I guess it depends though. Are you using a true spirit box? Because if you're using something that's connected to like a device like an iPad or a phone, then okay.
Yeah. Don't
Maybe, but like what are you using that you captured that on?
don't
Right.
use your phone. I tell people
It was the Phasma box. So
Which is an app on the iPad, right?
it's not an app. It's just it's a Windows program.
That's
Right.
an app. It's an application that runs on a software system.
the thing with them, and it goes back to the same thing. The thing with apps, and this is coming from somebody in technology. So the problem with apps is that could it be something real at times? It could be. We don't know. But they're too easily debunked because they're programmed. So a lot of these devices use GPS, not devices, but apps. They use GPS to know where you are. They use active listening to know what you're saying, and AI to respond to you. Or they're programmed to just randomly go. If you put on Spirit Talker and just leave it on the table, walk out of the room, come back an hour later, it has 400 words on it, full sentences, and, it's almost like it's talking with itself. But, and, a Spirit Talker a lot of times, too, will go very dark. It's always like, get out, why are you here? It's like, it's always nasty. Here's the easiest thing. Take an Ovilus, if you believe in the Ovilus, take a Spirit Talker app and just put a recorder, or something, and play them all at the same time. Let them all run and see what you capture. The app is gonna be just nonstop ridiculousness. They're fun to play with. I have tested almost everyone out there just to see what they do. And you will randomly, once in a while, get something that goes along with what you're saying. But is it because it knew that, or it was just a random thing? Because, I say don't use your phone. I wouldn't even say use it as a audio recorder. I mean, if you have to, you have to. But the problem with a phone is, even if you have it on airplane mode, there are a ton of apps and software in the background running all the time that make little tiny noises, vibrations, things that you wouldn't even notice that's going to contaminate the evidence. So when you come to me with something that you recorded off the phone, it's hard for me to say, because I'm going to lean toward that saying, how do you know that it wasn't something from that phone? Because it's a totally uncontrolled environment, the phone, I have taken it out and recorded video with it for something. Like I had, when I first had my SLS camera and I was playing around with it, I didn't have the screen record, so I pulled out my phone and recorded with it. But, I would say don't use apps. There's certain things that I'll talk about at these lectures. Apps, orbs, and flashlights.
That's part of like my struggle with anything that is app-based or software-based, or something, a program that has been scripted and written by a human being, is that somebody had to program that. They chose a bank of words or a bank of sentences, short of looking into the coding of whatever system you're using to see where did they pull their database from, like where are they pulling that from. It's really hard to then be able to, like you said, control the environment and say, okay, well, I know for a fact this is what this is doing. I know for a fact it isn't capable of that. Because unless you know the coding and how they programmed it, other than what's in the description, you really, without a doubt, can't say I know for a fact that this is the case.
And yeah, that's the problem with them, because if you have, and I know there's people out there with some of these apps that made them and swear by them, and they're okay, put the coding out there, show everybody the code. I know, of course they're not going to do that, and I wouldn't expect them to, but also, like, people go, oh, it's better than, say, the Ovilus. Okay, and again, I take the Ovilus with a grain of salt too, but Ovilus is what, $500-600, and the app is what, free or $299? What makes you think that the $299 phone app is some massive connection to the spirit world? That's how you have to look at it. We can program, and with AI now, I wouldn't trust anything that comes off of a computer or a phone or anything like that for ghost hunting or investigating. You can't now. AI is crazy. You're going to have enough trouble trying to decipher a video now.
Well, and at this point, all apps are to an extent data mining.
Yeah.
Not in a paranoid way, but just they're data mining because most companies sell their demographics and information so that they can continue building their applications. Right. And so it's like how we're interacting with it is also being to an extent monetized. So it's really kind of hard to trust that kind of stuff and say, yep, we're connected to the spirit world.
That gave me a very bad idea, but like also something that can make a lot of money.
Bad good idea?
Bad good idea. But like, there's places that are haunted and they're like, hey, come check our place out, use your whatever app to come in, and then every time they come in, it's the same story, it's the same words, it's the same demon, it's the same whatever, right? And then they're like, yeah, we have a reputation here, just check it on your box, on your spirit box. Like it'll tell you exactly what's here. And if it's always the same, it's like, oh, they got proof, oh, we made our night. And I bet that's gonna happen, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing that drives me the most crazy with like TikTok. I love TikTok, but the people on there, I'm sorry if I'm offending people out there, that are taking out the Spirit Talker app and they're going out to the cemeteries all day long and they're on lives for 4 hours at a time and they're walking up and they're talking to every tombstone, and the thing's talking back to them and like, yes, hi, John, how you doing? And I'm like sitting there like, oh my God. And there's a million people going, wow, that's unbelievable. And, they're sending money and sending gifts. And I'm like, again, paranormal entertainment. Paranormal.
Robert says, I have footage of Dr. Bill using an app. I smell blackmail. And another, Dano says, Bill has approved of my audio on my phone and orb pics. You're being called out, Bill.
Yeah, I see that. Now, Dano, I never said that was an orb. Let's get that straight. But I didn't. I said the picture was interesting and there was some things to the picture, but I never said you had an orb. But Rob, I was showing somebody how ridiculous the Spirit Talker was, and I think he got either filmed me with it in my hand or he took a picture. So yeah.
Context is everything.
And look, I'm not saying anybody that uses it is stupid. I'm saying go out and test it if you want. Don't bring it on a residential investigation, and don't just go out there and claim I have 100% proof of the paranormal with my phone. Because we don't. But you just gotta, again, they're programmed. So I mean, think about it.
Discernment.
Yeah.
Well, that, and you got to be there. Like you got to do your own investigating. You got to do your own, because it's so much different watching a video than actually being the person that was there, right?
Right.
Like you can tell a big difference. I mean, obviously, like some of these people, yeah, maybe they caught nothing, but some people, even if they don't catch something, they definitely sense something there, right? Like on one of the podcasts you were on, you talked about being an empath, and we are definitely empaths too, and I'm glad I don't see or anything, but like I definitely feel stuff. And it's, how do you quantify that? How do you go in here and be like, yeah, I didn't catch anything, but I definitely felt a presence that wasn't a person that's alive.
That's the problem in our field, is that we can't. I tell everybody all the time, the best captures are never caught. I can tell you stories all day long. I don't expect you to believe them because you weren't there. I tell people you have to be there to experience it, to see it, to understand. I can tell you some of the craziest things on the handful of demonic cases that I was part of, where I was, one where I was knocked clear across the room by nothing. So can I prove that to you? No. Do I know what happened? Yes. So it's one of those things. Yeah, it's a tough thing in this field, because we can't prove it. I hope someday in the future we're going to have a little more, to prove. Now we have to debunk, hoping that something could be evidence. Hopefully we'll have something eventually where we could say this is evidence. We don't have to think of 8 million natural causes for it.
I guess it depends too what your intention is, because if you have people that are empathic or have gifts that you can't video or audio record or get that hard evidence very easily, the question would be, who is the evidence for? Because if it's the person with the gift is on an investigation and they're there to help clear home, they're on a residential investigation to help, figure out what's going on, then maybe the audio video proof isn't as important as whatever the initial intention is. Now, if the intention is, hey, I want to prove it to the world, I have these gifts and ghosts exist and I need that external validation, then yeah, that's going to be very tricky with the equipment being used the way it is now. Not to say the technology can't do it, we just haven't figured out how to utilize it in that way.
Right, because now most of the technology is just being used by a lot of YouTubers that are going out there and screaming demons and everything and jumping and running and it's, again, that's not for research. And I'm not saying don't go have fun with it. Like I said, I watch the shows. I have fun. I go out. We do things. We enjoy ourselves doing it. But if you want to really learn about it, do actual research. Go out there with different types of recorders. I have 50 plus recorders here. I have stuff with old micro cassette tapes. Test them all. Test things out. Bring your Spirit Talker app and put it next to the Ovilus. Bring you know what I mean? Test everything and try to do research. Don't just go, look, I captured an orb.
It's a ghost.
Try to figure out what it was and see if you can find a reason for it, or could it be something real, And also, if you go online and you're going to ask for help, accept the responses.
No, you're wrong. Yeah. It's a ghost.
Oh my gosh, BJ is so used to that from me. He'll send John and I stuff. Look what I caught. And I'm like, but what about this? So did you consider that? And he's like, it's a ghost, Ashley. I'm like, but is it?
Somebody turned the light on and the light went on. Yeah. That light is electricity.
No. Well, there was not to call you out because it's not a call out, but it was there was one he sent us an audio clip of this guy in a hallway, and he's like, Ashley, there's a response of this voice and it's saying this. And when you said people listen for what kind of their subconscious intention is or what they're kind of hoping to hear, it was kind of that. They were in this, I think it was an abbey, and they thought that they heard the voice say, he is a sinner or something like that. And they're like, see, it fits. They're in an abbey and he's being called out. And I was like, hey, did anybody boost the audio? And he's like, what? He's alone. There's nobody else. And I'm like, but did you boost the audio? Was he really alone? You said there was 20 investigators there. He may have been alone in the hall, but sound carries, acoustics, and all of that stuff. And so I boosted the audio, and I think it ended up being 2 women's voices, and one of them whispering, is this it? And one's like, yes, we found it.
It's so disappointing when you think you have something really good and then you find something for it. I mean, that's the best way to do it, but it's also disappointing.
But BJ also wanted to kick me. He's like, shut up, Ashley. He's a sinner. And I'm like, sure.
It's also it's good to get debunked so that I'm not scared anymore.
That too.
It's also the way you learn. Yeah. If these people, for instance, in the groups, every time they post their orb video or their orb picture, everybody in the group tells them it's a ghost and a demon and their grandmother and their father and their mother. that's what they think it is. Now they're out there taking pictures all day long, and I had people argue with me with literally hundreds of orbs in this picture. And I tried so hard. I'm like, you're outside. I said, it's pollen. It's pollen. It's their security camera. And they would not accept it at all. And I'm like, so you really think you have like 400 spirits, just like they travel in groups and they just float around from house to house? I mean, I don't understand the logic in that one, but people want to capture something so bad, and they want affirmation of what they believe so bad that they don't care. I get people, they'll be like, well, why should I believe you? And I'll tell them how long I've been doing this, who I am, what I know. Oh, so you have an ego. I'm like, what? You just asked me.
A healthy ego. Yeah. So I roll with the paranormal posse. I have like 500 ghosts around me at all times. Now, speaking of, demons, part of your specialty is demonology. Now, it's a two-part question, but how did you first get into that field? And I don't know. I did read, I believe, that one of your first residential investigations involved like a demonic attack. So how did you get into that field, and how do you do that without, I guess, how do I ask this? Because it's based on an assumption. How do you do it without fear? Because you may have fear, but I'm assuming if you've been rolling in it this long, you don't.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this: if somebody tells you they have no fear going into a demonic case or anything with a demon, they have never encountered it. There is no way you can say, look, a ghost, a spirit does not scare me anymore. I've done this for a long, long time. I get touched and pushed and things all the time, and nothing frightens me at all like that. Any case I'm pulled into to help assess if it could be demonic is frightening because you don't know what's going to happen. So the way it started was the first residential case I ever had turned out to be a rare demonic case. Now, demonic cases are very rare. Like I said, I've done well over 1,000 residential cases. I've been part of 7 confirmed demonic cases. So I've been on plenty to assess them, and they were not, It is very rare. Actual possession is even more rare. But that case was a quick thing. We weren't in the house for more than 10 to 15 minutes tops, And I had never done this before. I knew nothing about protection. I knew nothing about demons. I knew very little about ghosts, So when the guy next to me got full on attacked, where he wound up with 3 scratch marks from his neck to the bottom of his spine. And this was in 1989. So I tell people, no, it was not for YouTube. It was not for the news. Nobody talked about it. This guy was frightened out of his mind, like I say, most people would run from that. Most people would probably quit. That team quit. Every team that I ever worked with on one of those cases all stopped doing this after those cases because they saw what could happen. And me, I was different. It actually made me want to go more because I wanted to understand it. Like I always say, when I came out of that case, I was scared. There's no doubt about it. I was freaked because I'm thinking, remember, I didn't know anything about demons. It was 1989. To me, I'm thinking, that's what the hell a ghost does? I'm like, what am I doing? But it made me want to learn. I wanted to know what that was, why it did it, why did it attack this guy, why didn't it attack me, why didn't it attack the other guy next to me, why was it in her house, what did she do? You know what I mean? I had a million questions, took me down the rabbit hole, and the same thing, I started reading on it. I started talking with a priest that I knew where I lived in New Jersey that knew a lot, and they started teaching me a little bit, and little by little, reading on it, working with people who have been, working with demonology for years, I learned a lot, and I started being called into cases. And the more you go on, the more you learn, there's no real straight out course. Like you can't go on one of these things, take a course for $25 and you're a demonologist. I always used to say that I've been doing demonology for probably close to 30 years. And up until last year, I always said I was a demonology specialist because to me, a demonologist, the title was kind of like a sacred title. It was either somebody in the clergy or somebody given the title from the clergy. And last year, I was acknowledged as a demonologist from a clergy. So, to me, then I'll use the title. I wouldn't use it before just because to me, I respected the title. You know what I mean? So, did I do the same thing as an actual demonologist? Yeah, but I never used the title because then, especially nowadays in the paranormal, there's a lot of drama too.
We don't talk about Bruno. That's a topic that we stay. We're lucky in Colorado right now to be spared. I'm sure it'll make its way over, but for now, we're spared of that.
There's a lot up in the East Coast.
I've read.
I don't get involved in it. I'm not part of any of that stuff. I know people probably on both sides and things, and I stay out of it. I have no time for that.
I did have a question about the demonology. Now, you talked about protection, and you talked about you talked about connecting with the clergy, and I've also heard you in a previous podcast talk about psychics, right? So throughout this whole time, are you like, I guess it's kind of, you're using everything that you can to help you understand, right? So with that being said, what has it been a combination of learning from the psychics to deal with the demons as well as the clergy? What have they bridged together for you, or is it something that's completely separate?
That's a tough one because with psychics, I've been around where they helped confirm something, but for me, if I'm in a case that's trying to determine if something could be a demonic, attachment or entity or whatever, or, infestation, whatever it is, I can't just rely on a psychic telling me, even if it's a psychic I trust 100%. And I trust them in many, many things. But when it comes to the demon side of it, I have to do my tests to help me, because demons, ghosts and spirits, they're out there. They're going to interact with us. They're going to do things. Demons don't sage, Palo Santo, things we use to cleanse a home. I use singing bowls, crystals, all kind of different things. That does nothing to a demon, and you wouldn't even know he was there. So you need to use religious provocation in order to call the demon out to know if it's a demon. So if I have a psychic with me and they believe it's a dark or demonic entity in there, I'm still need to do my test to see how it reacts, just to see, because everything lies. Demons lie, ghosts lie, they all lie. So a lot of them will mimic each other. So you kind of need both. I mean, honestly, just the psychic telling me there's a demonic entity, which helps a lot, I still need to do my test. I wouldn't just go on that,
Why do you suppose demons need religious provocation? And is there a specific one? Like, do you have to identify the demon to know which religion to provoke it with, or is it any religion?
It kind of, every religion has their own beliefs in demons. Some believe, some don't. Jewish faith, they don't believe in demons. They believe in divics, evil spirits. So they're similar, but they're not considered demons. So the thing is, it's what you've learned and how you've studied it. I studied mostly, Catholic demonology. So for me, a demon is a fallen angel, that are in a hierarchy that work up to the devil, So for me, the only way, and I'm going on my faith. So if I'm going in there and I'm protecting myself or I'm calling it out, I have to use my faith. That's the only thing that's going to protect me. So I need to call it out to see what it is. If the person that we're in their home and they don't want anything Catholic in there or anything Christian or whatever it is, they're Jewish and we'll work with them. And we have people, on my team and other people I know that work on every type you can imagine. But if it comes down to it where we're there and I need to protect myself or protect everybody in there, I'm still going to use my faith, because that's what it is. So for me, they are fallen angels, and
Now, you said true possession is even more rare. Have you encountered a person that was under what you consider true possession, and how did that look? How did that manifest with you?
I've never seen in person full possession. I've seen where most of them were at the demonic infestation into the oppression stage, and I've seen it where it did take over a person a couple times, but for very short periods of time, and it wasn't attached to them yet. It was just kind of using them to get to us. So it wasn't like a full possession case. They are rare. I've seen video of one through somebody, because most of them are not captured on video either. Catholic Church, they will not allow most of the time filming and things like that. So I have seen, I think, 2 videos with full on possessions, and they're pretty crazy. The ones I've seen that were not, in person, that were not actual possessions, were still as crazy as this. So it's bad no matter what, but full possession is rare. And again it goes by your beliefs on what you think. There's Christians that believe there are no such thing as ghosts and spirits. It's all demons and all the devil. So it's a tough call, because when religion comes into it with something like that, everybody's going to have their own opinions, and it's fine. It's just you need to use what you know and what you learn to help protect you.
Now, V says, I think can be aliens as well.
Yes, my wife loves aliens, and and the thing is, we don't know. Like, there's a lot of people out there that say the EVPs we get are extraterrestrial, that they may not be spirits and ghosts. And how do we know 100%? We don't. Could be. Some of them could be. We have no idea.
Well, we've talked to a lot of people on the podcast, especially people with gifts, that have told us, about different like interdimensional beings and coming through portals, and maybe they're just from a different planet, but they're talking to us through a lens of mirror, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, what's crazy is that, and it's not crazy, but it's just interesting that everybody that we talk to, they're all on the same page. It seems like a lot of them are like matter of fact, you pour water on something, it gets wet. It's kind of explaining it to you that way, but about things that aren't that simple.
Right.
And it's always just so fascinating. It's like, oh my God. I mean, okay. I mean, I haven't seen it, but you're so matter of fact about it. Like, how do I not at least want to be intrigued by it, right?
People can be very convincing. At some point, you have to wade through all of it to what does your intuition tell you?
And there's so much out there we don't know. The paranormal encompasses a whole lot of things. And I always say that the paranormal is the unexplained. So if you can explain it, it can't be paranormal. So anything that's unexplainable can be many different things. This is where it comes down to, we don't all know the answers. We don't know everything, and we learn every day. I mean, I'm still learning, and like you were saying, learning a little bit of everything. The last 12 years, I've been an IT director, but it's been at a psychiatric drug and alcohol treatment facility. So I've learned a lot about psychiatric illness and addiction and everything. So 70 to 80% of our cases are mental illness and things like that. You have to know how to. That's why I tell people, if you're going to do residential cases, learn what you're doing. That's where you could go out to a local abandoned place or a haunted location and have a ball. Take out your stuff, take out your spirit talker, whatever you want to do, and learn and research and have fun. But if you go into a person's home, now you're dealing with people's lives. And you really, really need to know the difference, and sometimes they mimic each other. A demon can easily mimic a mental health issue, and the same way, the other way around, or it could be both. But if you don't know how to tell the difference, or how to at least talk to the people and ask, and maybe ask them. We ask people for psychiatric evaluations and medical evaluations to continue their case if we feel there could be something there. And we tell them, a lot of people don't want to tell us if they have an illness. And it's not like we're going to tell you that's your problem. We need to know that so we could help determine, is that what it is? Is that what's causing it? People with illness, mental illness or addiction, they're actually more susceptible to attacks because they're already oppressed. They're already broken down and they're easier to take over. So sometimes they're more susceptible to attack. So it's those type of things are important. I always say, if you went into the house and the person said, I'm hearing voices, I'm seeing things, all the normal things you would get from somebody, and the team goes in there and they don't know anything but what they watched on TV, they're going to go, oh my God, there's a ghost in here, whether they can get it or not. And then what are they going to do? They're going to cleanse the house, or some of them are going to say it was a ghost, it was a demon. Maybe they don't know that the person was schizophrenic and they were off their medication, or just it was their schizophrenia just acting up, and now they told them that those voices they hear are demons, and when they leave the house, that cleansing did not help their illness. So now when you leave, that person still has the voices, and now think they're going to kill them. So it's very, very dangerous sometimes to play around with people's lives like that. So yeah, it's good to know a little bit outside of it. Like, I have a fully licensed psychologist on my team. I have people from all different things that know a lot of stuff outside of paranormal too, to help, because we all need to be a little skeptical.
Well, we've talked about this in the past too, that sometimes people get so excited and focused on the thrill of the ghost hunt or the chase of the paranormal that it can be easily forgotten when dealing with residential cases, when dealing with people that do believe, whether it's real or not, right? Whether their house is haunted or not, whether they have a demonic, entity occurring, that is real to them. They are living in fear. They are going through a very traumatizing time. And it's easy to forget that, right? Because it's like, oh, there's a ghost, there's a demon. And it's there's a person or people, and they're truly afraid. So I think it's great you have a licensed psychologist, because even if they're doing evaluations, they can also potentially help people deal with that fear and that anxiety that they're living in. So I think that's phenomenal.
That's how I am about my team was all handpicked by me, and I'm very picky. I get applications almost daily, and it's no offense to anybody. I try to judge what I feel too, but I don't care if you've had 2 days experience, 5 years, 20 years, 30 years. I don't care. That I could teach you how to investigate. I can't teach you how to be compassionate when we're doing cases, because it's a big difference. You have to be able, look, some of what we do is not exciting. We sit down at a house, or now we're on Zoom a lot on the first interviews and stuff, and you sit there sometimes for 3 and 4 hours with these people, just letting them tell us what is going on. And if you don't know the difference and you're all excited to see a ghost, they're going to be telling you probably some of the most horrific things you may have ever heard, because in their mind, this is how it played out. And you're going to be all excited. That's why I tell people, I said, if we're going into the location and I'm telling you what they told us already, here they saw this, they felt this, don't go in there thinking the place is haunted. Go in there thinking it is not, and prove that it is, because that's the easier thing. It's easier to disprove it, than it is to prove the paranormal. Get rid of all the natural things first. And a lot of people don't do that. And a lot of them don't like to do it because, okay, we all do want to get a capture. We want to find things. We want to be able to prove it. But, don't do that in a residential case. You'll never see us post stuff about our residential cases and things unless somebody gave us permission to use something for a specific reason. I do have some pieces we use from residential cases that are educational that I'll use in my lectures that I have permission. That's it.
I think for me, and I always talking about horror, we haven't really gotten to it yet, really, but The Haunting of Hill House. Like, I love that TV series. That, it was so good. And I think it speaks to everything we're talking about, because the perspectives of each one of the children in that show. And as adults, you have the skeptic, you have the empath, you have a child psychologist, you have all of these things, and they're all looking at the paranormal from a different lens. And I think that's what's so great about that show, is that you can identify with each one of these things, and they're all like conflicting, right? And they're all having a hard time coming together and actually believing in it, because it is so crazy, and it involves a lot of death and tragedy.
Right.
And so I think, for stuff like that, and I think that's why, for to add on to what Ashley was saying, I think it's great that you have a team full of people that are come from a variety of walks of life. Yeah. Because that's what's life is complicated, and death is too, right? Like all of it, you need more than just a paranormal investigator and a flashlight. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. And for everybody out there, a flashlight is to see in the dark. Don't get me started on that one. But
I was actually going to ask you about that. Since I agree with you on the orbs, I was going to ask your opinion on the whole flashlight thing. So,
well, here's the thing. If a spirit, we all believe, can manipulate electronics and energy and anything with a battery or any kind of energy. So put the flashlight down, a push button flashlight, anything, and ask it to turn it on. I know people who have had captures by their flashlight turning on, and they have a push button flashlight. If the spirit wants to turn it on, it can manipulate it. But when you take something and you unscrew the top until it just breaks the electrical connection, people don't realize that all you need is a 1 degree temperature change either way to make that case expand or contract. And that's why if you sit there asking 50 questions, eventually it's going to turn on during one of your questions, because something in the room made it turn on. And, and again, TV shows created that effect, and it's great to play around with and everything, but again, it's understand what you're doing. If nobody believes me, take the thing, unscrew it like that, and take anything, just keep it in a room and don't say a word, and sit there for 20 minutes, and it'll go on and off at times, because especially if you live down in Florida, because temperature changes are very easy down here. But there was something I was going to say before that, but so with the flashlights, again, a flashlight is use it to see in the dark, and I wouldn't gauge actual activity on the flashlight trick, and that's why it's called the flashlight trick. A lot of people don't agree with me.
Unless you take the batteries out,
yes,
and then ask.
Yes, there you go.
Take the batteries out, and then if it goes on, then you got something.
No, exactly, and there's the idea of how I say research things. So if you want to test the flashlight trick, test it, do it, see what happens. Take a different flashlight, see what happens. Take the batteries out of that flashlight, see what happens. Test those things, just like cat balls. Okay, what is a cat ball? It's a motion activated ball. So yes, it can work, but if you put that ball on a wood floor, it's pretty easy, that thing to move. I actually have now, I have 3D printed cat ball holders, and they're on my 3D printer. So you just put the cat ball in it, and that thing ain't gonna move. Now, obviously, if you get a hard vibration, it's like anything; it's gonna do that. But if you put it in there, I tell people, if you're in like an old hotel or something, go up to the bed and push the ball down into the sheets so it holds it, because it's going to take more of a little tiny bit of wind or something to make that thing go off if it's being held by something. So things like that. That's research. That's how you learn. It went off. Now try to prove it. That's all.
Oh, John has seen me jump all around a cat ball to see how close you have to be to set it off. Yeah. I'm hopping around it like a mad woman. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I have to know how sensitive it is."
And they're funny sometimes. They're like a REM pod, They can be. You can go over 20 feet away and tap the floor, and it'll go off. And you could be right next to it and stomp your foot, and it doesn't go off. So sometimes they're hard to tell with things like that. But that's all. That's what it's about. I mean, it's about learning. I tell people, if you're going to use equipment, learn how that equipment works. don't just turn it on and start playing with it, because you'll have no idea why it went off.
Now, in your demonology research and all of the, over 1,000 investigations, residential alone, that you've been on, is there anything that you have learned to do along the way to protect yourself, to make sure you don't absorb anything, or that nothing attaches to you, or you incidentally bring it home? Or has it happened? Like,
Yes.
whoops.
I try to do as much as I can. I can't say I'm always perfect. I try to do as much as I can. Nothing is foolproof. Nothing is 100%. I'm usually, when I go on an investigation, I'm pretty well protected. I have things, I don't have them all on me. I have things I wear that are, almost everything I have is blessed by a priest or a bishop or an exorcist. And I say certain prayers that I use to go in and to come out, both. But nothing's 100%. It's like I've had multiple attachments over my life. Not a lot, but they happen. I've had one from a place here in West Palm Beach at the Riddle House in Yesteryear Village. I've been to the Riddle House so many times, and I don't provoke. I don't do things like that. I'm not there to try to call out demons. I'm there to research. So I don't do anything like that. Sometimes I don't get it. Sometimes certain things just don't like you. And I got an attachment from there that I don't understand why. And we also, to go along with it, it was kind of proven by the EVP we got. It was one of the clearest EVPs I think we've ever had. It actually spoke over the person asking the question. And we were up in the attic of the Riddle House where the guy hung himself. And they don't open the attic up to everybody. And it was open for the team war party, because they do the city investigations there, and then we get private nights with them. So they were up in the attic. It was the first time I was up in the attic, and one of the Joe from War Party was asking a question. He said, okay, he goes, this guy's never been in the attic before, and he has a new device, so what I want you to do is talk directly to him. And a bunch of people had their recorders out. And the other guy, JP, his recorder, when he played it back, as he said, so what I want you to do, it was so loud and clear, it just said, he's dead. Straight out. Everybody heard it. I mean, it wasn't even a question of, did you hear that? Do you know what it said? It was pretty clear. I use it at my lectures, and I laughed. I joke with my wife. I came home, and then the next morning she's like, "Oh, did you guys get anything?" I go, "Yeah, you got to hear this. It's pretty funny." And that's not funny.
Funny.
And then for 2 weeks, I was completely messed up. I was sick. I was having every bit of bad luck you could have. There was nothing wrong with me. I didn't have a cold. I didn't have the flu. It was a mess. I had to get cleansed and blessed and get it off of me. But so it does happen. There's really no way to 100% protect yourself. You just got to do everything you can. My worst problem, and if my wife is still on here, she will jump in on this one. The thing I have the most problem with is when I'm not on an investigation. I just do things and don't think about it. So like when I got sick, she believes it was not just being sick. She thinks it was from what I did. We were on our way up to St. Augustine, because we go up there a lot, like New Year's time, for like a vacation. And on the way up, we stopped at Casadega. I don't know if you know Casadega, the city in Florida. It's a small city in Florida. It's considered the psychic capital of the world, because it has more psychics, in this one little town than anywhere. So it's a very spiritual town. You go in there, they have all kind of things going on, and there's a lot of haunted stuff in there. And there's a thing in the cemetery called the Devil's Chair, and there's a lot of myths behind the Devil's Chair. So when we go, we went to Casadega because she never heard of it. So I said, well, stop there on the way up. And we stopped there just to get something to eat. And, again, she doesn't like to investigate. So when she wondered why I was pulling into the cemetery. She didn't like that. And I said, just got to take a picture for me. And she goes, a picture of what? I said, I'm going to sit in the Devil's Chair. Just take a picture. And she's just shaking her head. And I'm in the chair, and I'm just taking a picture. And then there's a little doll on the chair next to me, all like hunched over. So I took it and I I straightened it out. I fixed it.
No.
She's like, why would you touch that doll? So things like that, because I am an empath and everything, I don't think, and I just sit in that chair. And again, it's not like it's the devil in there, but it's everybody else's energy. And you don't know, people do all kind of weird stuff at that chair, So you don't know what that doll was for. You don't know. And I just have a bad habit of, because I've been doing this so long, I just, I grab the doll. I don't care. But so she swears it's because I sat in that chair is why. So when we left Casadega, we had another, I think it was like hour and a half or so to St. Augustine. On the way up there, I got sick. And I had a respiratory infection the entire time we were up there. The entire 7 days we were up there.
So she said, yeah, all
Yes.
caps.
See?
Yeah, very dumb decision.
See?
And here's the thing. Like, as soon as you mentioned the doll, I was just like, oh, please tell me you didn't touch it. But here's the other thing. Like, the other side of that is that I can understand that. I actually like to go to cemeteries. I think they're serene, they're peaceful, they're calming, and the, tombstones and architecture there can be really pretty. I have been known, there was a really big windstorm, and I went to Fairmont Cemetery in Colorado. It's a historical one. I went recently, and there had been like a really big windstorm. Things got blown over. And I'm like, hold on, stop the car. And I jump out of the car to like pick up the statues and pick up the flowers. And I'm like, I shouldn't be doing this. And yet here I am. I can't help myself.
Right. Look, I'm pretty I just go at it sometimes, I don't think, but I don't do some of the dumb things that the myths, look, a lot of these things are urban legends, and it's like, I've been doing this for a long enough time. I've seen things that will frighten me for the rest of my life. So I know what's out there. So there's no reason to test some of this fate. Like, I sat in a chair, but one of the big things is if you sit in the chair at midnight, your devil's supposed to whisper in your ear or something like that. And it's like, why? Why would you even test that? What do you think he's going to say? It's not going to be anything good.
Isn't the devil's hour at 3:00 though? So
yeah. I think that's a little bit of
urban legend.
We no either, but yeah, that's the myth behind this thing. Look,
either way, don't test it. Like, we don't need the devil to whisper at us at any hour. At least
I'm good friends with David Sloan, who's the caretaker of Robert the Doll down in Key West. I've been down to see Robert the Doll many times. He's the most haunted doll in the world. And he's great. And, as long as you're respectful to him, he's fine. But why test it? There's a lot of myths behind it. Like, you don't be disrespectful. You have to ask permission to take his photo. Things like that. So I tell people all the time, is it all real? Even David will tell you he doesn't believe 100% anymore about the asking permission to take the photo, but it's more of a respect thing. But why test it? The amount of stories I've heard from people at my lectures and stuff, everything from the slightest little thing to people dying, are they coincidence? Most likely, a lot of them could be, but like David said, on top of the fact that there's believed to be multiple things attached to that doll, how many people are in there every night investigating with that doll, talking to that doll, bringing their own energy in?
Germs.
There's a lot of stuff going on in there, So why test that fate?
And even if you don't believe in it, like, dolls don't do it for me. I'm going to be honest. If, like, Annabelle, Robert, I don't believe they can curse me. However, like, it's a respect thing too.
Yes.
So if I go into someone's house and they're like, hey, this is what I believe. This doll's sacred to me, whether I think it's evil sacred or like blessed sacred. This is sacred to me. This is how I want that to be respected. Like,
Right.
That's not my house. I'm going to respect your doll. Like, sure, I won't do that. And, if it's like, well, that's kind of kooky to me, well, why am I in that house to begin with? Like, it just, it's respecting the rules of the space that you're in. And if it's like, hey, the doll thinks that, or I think the doll's going to curse you if you take a picture of it, well, you know what? I'm just going to respect you don't want me taking pictures of your doll, and we're set.
Yeah, there's no point in testing it. That's what I say. There's no point at all in testing that theory. I could tell you things from when I was little. Like I said, nothing most things did not scare me back then. Even when I was real little, I watched horror movies. I did everything. But there's still things that, do you really want to know? Like Bloody Mary, games like that and things like that. You know how many times I've said it twice? I don't think I've ever gotten the third one out, because why?
I will end this call.
You know what I mean? It's like, why test that? Like, if it's real, it's not going to go well. It's not like, oh yeah, here she is. This is great. There's
Like,
Mary.
was it worth
I'm
it,
good now.
guys?
No. The devil whispers in my ear. He's not saying hello.
You're not getting a free wish.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, speaking of these devil's chairs, because you mentioned the one in Florida, and I've actually done some research that there's another one that was removed from a cemetery in Illinois. And, apparently they're all over the Midwest. So I'm curious, what do you guys think that is? Why are there devil's chairs in cemeteries? Like, what was their initial purpose, and why is the devil whispering to your ear there?
I think it becomes all folklore. A lot of it. I think most of it starts I don't remember the full story of the chair, the devil's chair in Casadega, but I believe it was, some of these were built where, let's say, a husband and wife, and the wife died or the husband died, and they had this built in the cemetery so they could sit there and visit with their loved one, with the tombstone, instead of just having a tombstone or things like that. There's many different, I think, reasons why these things were created, but then they just take on this whole, lore of these urban legends. And again, some of them could be true, part of it could be true, but they all start playing like the telephone game. They all take off and go into a whole new realm of what could happen. Like, they tell you put an unopened beer at the devil's chair, and the next morning it will be opened and empty. Yeah, because the guy that lives right behind the cemetery is an alcoholic.
The caretaker's like, don't mind if I do.
Yeah, he's getting free beer every night, So, and there was beer on the chair when I was there.
That's hilarious.
I mean, and there's something to be said about people bringing offerings. It's like you said, that people, like thousands of people visit Robert the Doll, and they're bringing their own energy and their own who knows what attached with them. And, probably similar with these devil's chairs, we don't know what's being done at them. And the offerings that are being given and the energy being left there. There is what would you even call that? There's a grave in I know that word, but I'm trying to think of because it's it's not like a tombstone, it's one of the cement
mausoleum
toppers. Yeah. No, on top of the grave. You know how they're like the flat, almost like the plaques, I guess. Mm-hmm. But there is one in Salt Lake City that a lot of people visit and leave tributes to, and like coins and stuff like that. It's the only thing listed on it is the victim of the beast is what it is. And so, it doesn't have, a name on it. It's just the name is Victim of the Beast and, 666. And it's just oh, that's interesting. But people go, they will travel to find that grave in Salt Lake City and leave the coins and leave offerings. And it's a fascinating, really sad story if you look into who actually that grave belongs to. It's
most of them are. Yeah.
Probably not really supernatural, but whoever decided to invest in putting that tombstone or whatever you want to call it on there, it's well, that's sad.
Superstition, right?
Yeah.
More.
Well, you know what it is? It's like when we talk about dolls, everybody always asks why. Me and Joe Frankie, we were just at MegaCon, and one of our panels, we were talking about haunted dolls. So we were talking about dolls in general. He talked about Annabelle because he worked with the real Annabelle. So he talked about Annabelle. I talked about Robert. But we explained to people. People say, "Why do dolls get haunted?" We don't believe. Well, first of all, I don't believe that anything can possess a doll. I think they could use it, and they could attach to it and things like that. But they're not possessing the doll. But one of the things is, most dolls, what do you do especially with a young kid or somebody, they get a doll, they treat that doll like a person. So you're acknowledging it. And the more you talk to it, and it's almost like investigating. You're talking to an imaginary thing. So you're talking to it, you're acknowledging it. This is what happened with Annabelle originally. You're talking to it, you're acknowledging it. Eventually something came in there. It's the same thing with the devil's chair and with things like that, or, even around Robert, everybody's energy is going in there, and they're acknowledging it, and they're communicating with it, and they're talking to it, and it's pulling more things in. So it's the same thing. So look, all the dolls on eBay are not haunted dolls, but but if you buy that haunted doll that somebody says is haunted and made up a fake story to sell that $5 doll for $400, when you get it and you believe it's haunted, and you keep talking to it, and you keep playing with it, and you investigate around it, you may eventually make that thing haunted. And that's why we tell everybody, like my team members, except for one, I know she's not listening, but she'd be getting yelled at right now anyway. Don't ever investigate in your house. Yeah, don't investigate in your house. I don't use my equipment in my house because you're going to eventually pull something in, because what we're doing is communicating, so don't do that. I'll test it, make sure it works, and then I take it out of the house. My wife will kill me anyway if I start pulling that stuff out of here.
Yeah, we've stumbled into the dark side of the paranormal web, where there are people that actually take dolls and play these paranormal games, for lack of a better term, to haunt the dolls and then sell them. And it's just that's awful. You're trapping spirits. If it's working, you're trapping spirits.
And that's the other thing with the locations. Once you hear devil's chair, guaranteed at every one of those devil's chairs, there have been Satanists doing rituals, because that's what happens, and that definitely does not bring good energy around the area, because they're not doing it for good.
They need to work on their PR for the area. Just adjust it a little bit, then it'll become the chair of flowers.
Yeah. Do some research on the Devil's Tree in Port St. Lucie, Florida. We go up there all the time. It's a pretty interesting story, and that's what happened. It's the whole. There was a serial killer, and it started with a serial killer, but then everybody started doing satanic rituals and all kind of things around this tree, and this tree has very bad energy.
There's one in Savannah, Georgia, too, that was the hanging tree, and now they call it the demon tree because of everything that happened there.
Ashley and John know that, that I dream a lot, and it's a lot of weird stuff. And it hasn't happened a lot lately, but the past, I would say maybe a couple weeks, I had sleep paralysis, right? And I haven't had sleep paralysis in a long time. And this most recent time, I fell asleep. I started having sleep paralysis, but it was like I entered a dream, and Annabelle came around the corner and peeked around and looked at me. And then I was like, nope. And then I took myself out of the sleep paralysis like that. And I've never done that ever before in my life. I was just instantly, I felt the sleep paralysis. I saw the doll, and then I was like, that's not going to happen tonight or today. And then I just snapped out of it.
Not today, doll.
Yes, that's one of those things. Don't play. Don't test it.
It
could have been nothing, but you don't want to know.
Robert asked, "What about demonic pets? Is that a thing?
Benicula?
Now,
are we talking about hellhounds? What do we or actual pets?
Well, I think there's a lot of people. This is where you start getting into the controversy again. There's a lot of people that believe pets and can get possessed by demons and ghosts and everything, and I don't believe that, because I don't. But first of all, there's no reason that a demon or something is going to get into an animal. I mean, do animals come back? Yes, I believe my old cat is here. We have as much proof as you can possibly have. We have, but as far as we'll get it all the time. Oh, I believe there's something in the house. I'm hearing things. I'm seeing things. My cat is acting crazy. How long have you had a cat? He's staring at the wall. I said, yeah, well, my cat can stare at the wall for 4 hours for an ant that's on the ceiling that you can't even see. So to judge an animal like that is kind of tough, because they're animals. But we do believe they have a heightened sense. I believe they can sense a lot. I don't truly believe that they can possess an animal, and that's why you go back, because you got Eli Roth, who comes out with my possessed pet or whatever it was. He did a whole series on it, and I don't know. I don't know what to say on that. It's just a lot of people that that's what they believe, and what are you going to say? Can you prove it? No, we can't prove it, but I think they will sense things and they can act pretty crazy, but I don't think they could be possessed or.
Yeah, because I feel like that'd be some Pet Cemetery stuff. You got to expel the animal's spirit out before you shove something in. Because I feel like part of when we talk about, no matter what you ascribe to, different religions, different beliefs of where demons come from, I think they all kind of agree there has to be an opening, there has to be a willingness. And I don't know what asshole cat is out there saying, yeah, pick me, take me. Like, I don't, but I could be wrong.
Demons just. And again, I'm going to say this is my opinion. Demons just don't float around and wander into your house. Most of the time, they are summoned in one way or another. It doesn't mean you took out a Ouija board and called Satan, but they had to be brought in for some reason. If you're a person, like I tell people, when you're using a Ouija board, the Ouija board is a piece of wood. It's not a magical device. It's your intent and what you're doing. So if you're there looking for a loved one and you're grieving, you're already oppressed, and you're trying hard to connect to something, then something has a chance to come in and trick you. Things like that. So it's not. Yeah, they're not just wandering around everywhere, just waiting for your cat to look at them wrong or something.
So then that begs the question, when we're out there in the paranormal world trying to investigate and trying to connect with things and receive things, are we priming ourselves? Accidentally.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're not calling up, you're doing it in again, controlled sort of, as long, I would assume you know what you're doing. You know how to protect yourself, you know what you're doing, what to believe, what not to believe. I think it's more along those lines, because like all these people that have channels and YouTube channels and stuff, and they're running around demons. I saw 2 demonic locations in one night. No, they're not. Can a spirit harm you? I don't believe they can harm you. They can touch you, maybe scratch you or something, but they're not there really to harm you at all. But I say this, if you know somebody who is a cranky old person in life, they're most likely a cranky old person in death. So I would say more of just, not very friendly people. But a demon is there to harm you, and it's a completely different thing. They're not just floating around in the area looking. I don't believe that. I know there are a lot of people that do believe that they could come in anywhere, but I believe they have to be brought in one way or another.
We have gone pretty far along, and I don't want to keep you too late. However, we like to wrap up our episodes, especially because you mentioned it earlier. You grew up on horror. We love to wrap it up with our friends that we know enjoy horror, yes, with the one question. Yes. What's your favorite scary movie?
Now, I gotta jump back to one thing, because I remember what I was going to say before. I couldn't remember. We went off. I'll go off on things.
Oh, no, please do.
When you were talking about shows, the TV show Evil is the best show I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That goes along with what we do. Now, of course, it gets a little dramatic with the actual demons walking around, like the way they do it, but that is extremely real. I was watching that. I hadn't watched it until like the last season, and then I started watching it, and I'm like, holy crap! How did I not watch this before? It is so, they have the forensic psychologist, the guy who's the scientist and the tech guy and the priest, and it is absolutely what real investigators do. I love that show. I wish they kept it going. I don't know why in the world they stopped it,
Yeah.
But now if you go back to just scary movies, it's hard for me to not always choose the original Halloween as my favorite. It really is. I mean, I have a million. I love Trick or Treat. I, of course, love The Exorcist. The Exorcist was the only movie ever that scared me when I was young.
Oh, that's good.
And I joke about that because how the hell did I transition to what I do? I don't know.
Studying demonology.
Yeah, I don't know. I watched that, got scared, and said, "Oh, I got to go try that." I don't get it. But no, I'll be honest. I love all types of horror. I love really good horror, psychological horror, gory horror, stupid horror. I grew up in the '80s, so I've seen a lot of stupid horror. And I love it all, but I always go back to the original Halloween and the original Friday the 13th. Those because they have meaning to me because I grew up on them more. And like Friday the 13th, one of the cool things I had is growing up in Jersey back then. I was a Boy Scout, and we used to go to Camp Nobi Bosco, which is where they filmed the original Friday the 13th. I used to sleep in those cabins all the time before it was really out there known what it was. We would go into I knew as a horror person, but when you would go in, they didn't advertise it like they do now. Now they promote it and they have sleepovers, They did not talk about it back then. You went into the front store. It was a little general store where you could buy candy and stuff like that, and they had the original sign in there, "Welcome to Camp Crystal Lake," that was in the front of the thing. That was in there, and that was the only time you talked about it. But when you're like 10, 11 years old, it's fun to see who's kind of got the guts to sneak out of that cabin at 2:00 in the morning and jump in that lake, because when you get down to that lake, it looks like the scene.
Did you do it?
Yeah, we did. And somebody always had a mask and scared everybody. It's just how it was. But we slept in those were the actual cabins from back then. When I was there, it was not too long after they filmed the movie. So, I want to hear what are your favorites?
The Lost Boys and Fright Night.
Oh, well, Lost Boys. Yeah. Lost Boys, you have to.
You have to.
Given. That's just a given.
Thank you. But definitely love Fright Night. That's a top for me as well.
Sure.
Ashley likes her vampire stuff. I mean, I do too.
But I also love Hellraiser. Hellraiser's a number. Like, you can't see my walls, but I have pinhead art, and I have a configuration somewhere around here, like a music box, but it's metal, and so it's etched metal. Oh, it's so lovely. But yeah, I'm all about it.
I have an autograph from Doug Bradley from it was must have been maybe 2 years after the original film came out. It was at the Chiller convention up in New Jersey when I was just going as a a fan. Yeah. You gotta love Hellraiser.
This is mine. It's Nightmare on Elm Street.
Dream Warriors.
And the Dream Warriors for 1 and 3, yes. And yeah, this is from Heather. And she's amazing.
John Thomas, favorite horror movie?
Well, mine, I do like the Scream series, but Nightmare on Elm Street as well. Okay, I love it, but yeah, just a little bit. But yeah, that and Nightmare on Elm Street for sure.
Now, Bill, you've been a phenomenal, amazing guest. Where can our listeners and our viewers and everybody that's tuning in and will tune in find out more about you?
So the easiest place is my website, which is simple, billslevin.com. It has everything on Facebook. You could find me there too. I try to post everything where I'm going to be on my website. So I have a news section and I have an events calendar. The calendar isn't always updated as good. The news section will normally have it. I try to get around as much as possible. There are going to be a lot more things this year. I don't have a lot of them confirmed, or some of them I can't even talk about yet. So just keep an eye on my website. It's the easiest way, or on my social media. I'm bad. Oh, also, this year at some point, my YouTube channel will be coming out. Now, I've been yelled at for years by friends, family, fans. Why don't I have YouTube? I don't have the time. That's what it was. So, and I'm not going to do just a channel that looks like, Ghost Hunters. It's not going to be like that. I will do some investigations, but we're going to do educational stuff. We're going to do live interviews with people, because I have, good connections and friendships with people like David Sloan and, a lot of people in the industry that people want to hear from. So we'll do live interviews. We're going to do investigative stuff, historical stuff, actual investigations, all kind of different things. It's not just going to be a weekly come yell demons and watch me scream and run out the door thing,
But can we yell demons?
We can, every once in a while.
Awesome. Great. Just for fun.
Yes.
It's keep people on their toes.
Gotta have a little demons, a little bit.
That's gotta be a T-shirt. You gotta have a little bit of demons,
Just a little demon.
just to keep things spicy.
Right.
Bill, this has been amazing, and I'm sure I can speak for the guys. We would love to have you back on again when because I feel like this conversation could go on and on.
Yes. Anytime. I love being on. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, do we have any final thoughts before we wrap this awesome episode up?
Just thanks for coming on. Like, I appreciate your insight, especially when it comes to like the technical side of the paranormal investigations. You know, I'm always on the lookout for just learning, right? That's the point of this, is just learning from each other and hopefully not stepping on each other's toes, because that
we're not in competition
for some people. I know,
they don't
right?
understand that out there. We're not in competition. I learn from people every day. You know, even though I've been doing this for so long, I have a PhD in parapsychology and things like that. That doesn't mean I don't learn from everybody. I learn from people who are brand new. Sometimes they'll do something or say something I didn't even think of. You know, or they know something I don't know outside of the. There's so much to learn from, and that's what it's about. It's not competition.
Bill, I really appreciate you coming on, and again, would love to have you on again. And yeah, John Thomas, do you want to bring us home?
I sure do. Maybe. Just kidding, of course. No, seriously, Bill, thank you for coming on. Learned a lot. And like you all have said, you know, not a competition. We definitely need to work together. Imagine what we can actually accomplish when that does happen, if that ever happens. So thank you for your insight, like BJ said as well. Thank you to all of our listeners and our viewers for listening and watching this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your hosts. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And I'm BJ Segura.
If you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss amazing guests like Mr. Bill here.
Also, don't forget to check out 3hauntedpodcast.com, where you'll find all of our past and current season episodes, as well as guest information and all kinds of awesome merch.
Until next time.